right, good morning, everybody. We'll get started here. We only have about 30 minutes, so thank you for joining. I am Katie Shorey, Startup Maine's president, and today is our second session of the Entrepreneurs and Ecosystem Builders series. These virtual events feature thinkers and doers from across the state who are working on awesome things, awesome products, and for those that are also helping to further develop our startup ecosystem. Today's event would not be possible without our sponsors, Bangor Savings Bank and Maine Technology Institute, as well as our business news sponsor, Maine Biz. And a little bit about MTI, Maine Technology Institute. It was founded and funded in 1999 by the Maine State Legislature, and they offer grants and loans, equity investments and services to support Maine's innovation economy. They support new ideas and products and methods with the potential to grow and diversify Maine's economy and increase the number of quality jobs through the state by directly supporting innovators. And they also support the innovation economy through event sponsorships that promote innovation like this series. So we thank them so much. They've been a great partner over the years. And to find out more about them, and if you're eligible for funding, visit mainetechnology.org. And I'm also going to show you a brief 30-second video from our other sponsor, Bangor Savings. So one moment, let me share this screen and play the video.
All across New England, business owners are finding new ways to succeed. Families are working hard to provide for their loved ones and their future. It's the spirit of New Englanders that inspires all of us to do more. It's in our employees, our customers, and our communities. Every day we do more, because at Bangor Savings Bank, we truly believe you matter more.
Great. So now I am excited to introduce you to today's guest, Torey Penrod-Cambra, co-founder and chief marketing officer of HighByte. And a quick note, Torey and I officially met last October, when she and her other co-founders came out to San Francisco with Startup Maine to attend an exhibit at TechCrunch Disrupt. And ever since, I've been trying to get to know her better, learn from her, and really just follow along on her startup journey. So I'm excited to jump in. Welcome, Torey.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome. So tell me about yourself. Tell me about HighByte. Let's jump right in.
Okay, that sounds good. So I'm the co-founder and chief marketing officer at HighByte, which is a Portland, Maine-based software company that was founded in 2018. And just a little bit of personal background on me. I moved to Maine 10 years ago now. And after a couple years of being here, we had moved here so that my wife could attend grad school, and then, like so many others, just fell in love with the state of Maine and decided to stay. So in 2012, I started looking for an opportunity here in the state, and my career to date had been heavily in the life sciences and pharmaceutical and medical device. So there was probably more logical choices for me to take, but instead I found this small industrial automation software company called Kepware in Portland, and I just knew there was something really special about it and saw its huge potential. And so I joined that team in 2012 and then went through the process of helping the company grow, scale, and then go through the due diligence and eventual acquisition of the company by PTC in 2016. And then stayed on for a couple more years after that, until 2018, where my role within PTC really grew. So prior to becoming a founder of HighByte, I was the vice president of marketing at PTC of all of their Internet of Things and augmented reality product portfolio. And of course, at Kepler is also where I met John Harrington and Tony Payne, who are my fellow co-founders at HighByte.
Excellent. So let's talk about how the idea came about for HighByte. How did you see a need for what you now offer? And let's tell folks what HighByte is and what you do and who you serve.
Yeah, so HighByte is a software development company. We focus on the industrial space. So typically our customers are in the discrete or batch manufacturing industries. And what we're helping those customers do is to model and add context to the data that's coming off of the plant floor. And so 5 years ago, our software really wouldn't have been needed. If there was an engineer on the plant floor, he or she was intimately familiar with the data that was being produced by machines, and they were using that data for process control. But the Internet of Things has really changed that. And now, instead of one person, looking at that machine data right there on premises, it might be going to dozens of different IT applications. It might be going to a business analyst or a data scientist halfway across the world who needs to analyze that information. And so the need for context in sort of raw data and the need to model and standardize and correlate information has just become so critical in the last 5 years. And so we provide a tool set for manufacturers to go and to be able to have the data infrastructure they need to scale their projects from pilot into full scale production. So what's funny though about HighByte, so that's kind of who we are, but then the funny part about how we got started is that I think most companies start with a great idea, but like we just started with a great team. So we knew the three of us, we had very distinct swim lanes. We loved working together. And we knew there were still plenty of problems to solve with data in the manufacturing space. So we actually spent the first 6 months after founding the company just doing research, talking to customers, talking to system integrators, going to industry events, just learning and absorbing and understanding what the problems were in the space. And from there, we formed the company. And what I think is interesting is, that original problem we uncovered, we just haven't wavered from at all. And so while, COVID-19 has sort of been a challenge, but it's also really driven the need for more digitalization in manufacturing, and we're frankly benefiting from that. Even throughout the challenges of this year, our mission really hasn't wavered at all, and what we uncovered in that early market research is still what we continue to drive and develop toward.
And how big is your team now? I mean, how's the growth been there, and with customers too? How's that going?
Yeah, no, it's good. We just launched our first product to market this year. So always fun when you launch a global product during a pandemic. It takes some bravery there, I suppose. But we're a team of 7 now. And we had previously, we've run the company as a pretty lean startup to date, but now are just starting to really scale up the team, and expect a lot more growth next year as well, both in terms of revenue and growing the size of our organization.
I like to hear that. Good. So let's talk about a day in the life of an entrepreneur, because I feel like it's different for everyone, and I'm sure you wear many hats. So just help paint a picture of your daily entrepreneurship life.
Yeah, it's kind of wild sometimes. So when I was working in corporate, I think at one point on my team, there were 34 marketers. And so we were all focused on demand generation for a handful of products. And so we're very highly specialized. In startup world, you trade that depth of specialization for this very broad sort of set of knowledge. And so I had to expand my knowledge base a lot from just marketing to operations, because now we're running an entire operations and marketing organization with 2 people. And so it just requires you, I think, a lot to be able to switch back and forth between very left brain and right brain activities. So in one day I might be writing a press release, and then I might have to transition and look at cash flow statements. And then I might transition and work on a new HR policy. And then I might transition and talk to legal counsel about our investment strategy. So you're constantly oscillating between really different tasks and different sides of your brain. And it was mentally fatiguing to me at first, to be honest. I think my strategy now, and I offer this as unsolicited advice to anyone who's watching, is to give yourself a mix of stretch and comfort activities every day. So for me, my comfort is writing. I love to write. So if I block off some time to do something that I feel truly competent about during the day, it kind of helps build my confidence to go out and do other stretch things or research other accounting implications or other things that for me are stretch activities. So just finding the right balance every day between doing things that build my confidence and doing things that like extend my knowledge.
So it sounds like that is that life is different than what Kepware may have been and PTC with more corporate. So,
Yeah.
So what did you learn at Kepware and then through the PTC acquisition that prepared you for starting your own business? Like, how did you go from corporate to startup?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I'm glad you asked that. So I think in some ways, having worked at corporate makes startup easier, because if you know what the end destination looks like, it's kind of easier to get there. So at PTC, at Kepware, you know, we have this very like highly sophisticated organization, obviously, and as a startup, we're much scrappier, but I still know how important some of the foundational elements are towards like accounting and legal. So because I know how important they are for the acquisition. And so acquiring companies or investors are looking at things like how you're incorporated, you know, whether you're an S Corp or a C Corp, that's going to have implications down the road. You know, what are your accounting practices on cash versus accrual? It's sort of like those simple kind of things where if you know the sophistication that's required to have a really successful exit, which I've gone through that process before, then it helps you build a good foundation from the start. And I will just take a second to plug and say, I'm very grateful for the time that we spent up front selecting our professional services, like our banking partners, our accounting partners, our legal partners. I think, you know, to date, they've been very critical to our success, and they're all Maine-based companies, and I'm really grateful for that.
Good plug.
Yeah, and just one more thing too, I think before I move on from this, but I think in our head, like there's a certain stereotype of what an entrepreneur is, right? What they look like, how they act. And I don't think a lot of people look at corporate pedigree and say, oh, yes, transitioning from corporate into startup world makes a lot of sense. And on paper, like I'm not a Silicon Valley poster child, right? Like I'm almost 40. I have 2 small kids at home. I'm a woman. And as a personality trait, I'm not very, I don't like risk. Like I'm very careful. So on paper, I don't look like a good entrepreneur necessarily, but I think I challenge myself to think, what is an entrepreneur? And for me, what drove me from corporate into the position that I am in now is one, the really like the need to build something from scratch and prove to myself that I could, you know, take something from nothing and grow it into a really successful, wonderful company here in Maine that had a really healthy culture and a great quality of life for our employees. I just needed to grow that from scratch. And then I think the second was having John and Tony, who are incredible co-founders, and gave me the confidence to do something like start a company, which is inherently risky. I think my trust in them, I can't like understate enough. And that really helped sort of de-risk the situation for me as well. So the need to build something from scratch paired with the deep trust I have of my co-founding team, you know, let me say to myself, I'm not your standard or your typical entrepreneur, but I still deserve this opportunity to give to myself. And there's still space for me here too. And I think anyone who's watching this that maybe is in corporate now and has turned around an idea in their head of, could I do this? The answer is yes. You're absolutely, you're enough. And you have all the skills you need to do this if it's something that's really important to you.
I love that. And we had talked about this before, about that Maine culture too, and like just the grittiness and being open to trying things. Like if we can brand Maine as a place where all kinds of entrepreneurs are welcome, that could be a game changer for us, I think.
I agree.
So, but speaking of Maine, so you have utilized resources and tapped into the entrepreneurial support organizations in the state. So what worked for you? Who did you partner with? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, first I'll say there's a lot that's working. It's working really well. I mean, of course, there's challenges and everything, but I just want to, well, we should level set there. There's a lot that's really working and working well in Maine. We've had a variety of partners, like institutional partners. So earlier you mentioned Maine Technology Institute. They were critical to us, from grants and now a loan that we are working with them on. That's been critical. MTI has been excellent to work with. Maine Venture Fund, they're one of our early investor partners and continue to invest in the success of our company. They've been critical. At a government level, FAME, amazing organization, incredibly responsive, very well organized. So the Maine Seed Capital Tax Credit Program, awesome, and a huge incentivizer. And they even just under Governor Mills's administration relooked at that program this year and expanded it from $5 million to $15 million. So huge opportunities for investors now and into the coming year. Even the Maine Economic Recovery Grant that just opened, I mean, that was an incredible program also done through FAME. Organizationally in Maine, what's working? Startup Maine. So, you know, obviously the annual conference was a challenge this year to hold, but we're still here right now, Katie, you and I sitting here, and we're doing these virtual events, and you're still keeping everyone together. So I love that. And then I just think at the individual level, Maine to me is a network of people that are so generous with their time. As opposed to stories that I've heard from entrepreneurs in other states, it's so easy here to ask someone out for coffee. People are looking for opportunities to help. They're looking for opportunities to mentor. And we kind of have this attitude, I feel like in Maine, of like, pay it forward. So everyone's very generous with their time, because I think we all believe that like what we reap is what we'll sow. And it's just like it's a certain kind of Maine generosity that I think is really special here.
I agree. I always say, I mean, having been in DC and San Francisco, Maine isn't transactional. It's relationship oriented. And I think that's really important to focus on. So
yeah, I hope we preserve that as we continue to grow and as the startup network expands.
I agree. So investing, let's talk about money for a bit. How have you approached investing in state, out of state? I mean, I know you mentioned MTI, Maine Venture Fund, but what's that out of state approach look like?
Yeah, so for us, what was smart was using a combination. So we kind of have the best of both worlds. So in state, we have organizations like MTI and MVF. They know inherently sort of the challenges and opportunities of growing a company here in the state of Maine. And so in that way, like, they offer something unique to other organizational or institutional venture outside of the state. But for us, because we're such a niche product in some ways used in manufacturing technology, it was important to us to also find an investor in our particular vertical market that's very focused on manufacturing technology, the Internet of Things, and had more of a global reach. So, you know, one of our primary other investors is actually a global VC, not even based here in the States. So for us, it was sort of that combination between, you know, local versus out. But I will say the one thing that all of our investors have in common is that John and Tony and I were really clear about what values we were looking for in investors, and whether they're in state or out of state, we've selected investors that are aligned to our values. And frankly, we've walked away from some that aren't.
We should have a whole other conversation on that another time. So that would be definitely a good conversation. So only because we have 10 minutes left, let's talk about just some problems that you're facing, and then we'll end on some big ideas. So what are some problems that you're facing right now?
Yeah, maybe a couple. So the first is finding senior technical talent and finding diverse talent. I'm sure Maine is tired of talking about these topics, but they still just continue to be true. We have a great network here of colleges and universities, which is awesome, but I think we're still starting to, the more senior talent is like taking time to sort of percolate through the state. And diverse recruitment is still, it can be a really big challenge here. And And I say that as someone who is a woman who is coming from the LGBTQ community, and I still struggle to find more people like myself to bring into an organization. So it's certainly not for lack of trying, and I feel like that's an area where we're all still sort of learning from each other about how to best tackle these problems. And I think the second area, so talent acquisition is one. The second one is really like logistics. And by that, I mean sort of, there's not a lot of like true incubators in terms of physical space here in Maine. And so real estate is still really tricky. I know that seems very tactical, but when you're in startup, you have no idea what your company is going to look like in 5 years. And so a 5-year lease just becomes this sort of laughable thing where, I mean, it's just not plausible. So I think, I guess I would challenge anyone who's watching this that is in sort of real estate or entrepreneurship to be thinking about how can we help companies start here and sort of graduate up in their space in a way that de-risk this for them. So just the physical logistics of operating a company here is can be really challenging still.
Okay, yeah, and we've talked about healthcare and staying competitive.
Absolutely.
And I'm doing some research on healthcare and startups, so more to come on that.
Thanks, Katie. I like when I send you off on these missions.
Hey, I want to see the needle move. I want to help. So
I know.
So and we did have one interesting question pop up. I think it's kind of on what you just talked about, just some of the problems. If there's one thing Maine could change or do more of to support your growth, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it's the talent piece. And we're doing a lot of things right now. It just needs to continue to head in that direction. So I love seeing this sort of, like, I feel like a little bit we're having an entrepreneurial movement in Maine right now. It's like early, but it's happening. And the talent piece is just so critical. So I see great sort of STEM things happening at, at the middle school and high school level. Incredible programs happening from Lewiston, even all around the state. So these sort of grassroots movements are happening at that early stage. And then I see more entrepreneurial programs now at colleges throughout the state, and obviously Rue Institute. I think that's going to be a tremendous benefit to the state. So you have all these like little things happening, but they're just happening in pockets everywhere. So to me, solutions around attracting talent to the state of Maine, and then keeping our college kids here after graduation and continuing to help them grow their careers here in Maine viably, I think is so important. So for me, and maybe it's because I know that we have a lot of company growth ahead of us in terms of recruiting, and I'm constantly thinking about how do we get the best talent in here. And so for me, yeah, definitely the talent acquisition and talent retention piece.
Which, wearing my other hat with Live Work Maine, always on the top of my mind, but there's so much more to be doing there. And yes, agree. Actually, after the last session, somebody sent me an idea around like Startup Maine, junior entrepreneurs. So just wheels are spinning there. So last few minutes here. So what are you, because you said we're having a moment, is there anything, which I agree, and I've heard others say that too. So what are you most excited about that you're just with everything kind of going on amidst COVID-19?
Yeah, I know. Heck of a year, really. No, I think the areas I'm excited about, like I just mentioned, that sort of multi-level, everywhere from like middle school all the way up through graduate programs and beyond. I see all of that starting to come together. That's really exciting. I think the potential for entrepreneurship to change Maine's economy. I mean, you don't have to like take my word for that. There's so much data on how small businesses and entrepreneurs positively impact the economies around them, and I would love to see Maine benefit from that. And then the third, I guess, is like, to the piece of the movement. You mentioned that we were with you last year at TechCrunch, and we made these incredible sort of bonds with the other companies that went in a way that we almost couldn't have done here in Maine. We like went all the way to California to bond with each other, which was kind of funny, but those relationships have really preserved. I mean, just as an example, I mean, the amazing team at Defendify comes up with this great idea and reaches out to us a couple weeks ago and says, well, what about the intersection of manufacturing technology and cybersecurity? Let's do a podcast. And we're like, yes, great. So I think there's so much opportunity for entrepreneurs in the state to continue to work together creatively. And that makes Maine special too, because entrepreneurs in other states, I feel like often look at each other as competition for resources. And here we're just not taking that mentality, and we're like sticking together and finding ways to build each other up. And I'm really excited about that.
Good. Do you have any suggestions for early stage founders who are looking to grow or relocate in Maine? I mean, I know you started, but when we're talking about talent, a piece of that may be companies moving here, and then they're also going to need to get plugged in. So any early stage founders who are looking to grow in Maine, grow or relocate to Maine, any advice there?
Yeah. You know, it's a harder year to network, obviously, because of COVID. So much of what we're doing is virtual, and that can be tricky when not in person. I said it earlier, but I will stress the importance of great professional services partners. So, you know, really doing your research and talking to other founders about who will be a great legal, accounting, banking partner for you. Those resources are really critical to you as you grow. I think those are super important. And, you know, the other sort of, I guess, in close up to like big idea I'll put out is it can't all just be on entrepreneurs to do all of this. We need investors to help too. And it's much easier if I'm approaching an investor outside of the state of Maine because an investor inside of the state of Maine made that connection rather than me trying to contact them cold. And I think the more the investor community in Maine reaches out and networks and becomes more comfortable too with different investing formats that are used on the West Coast. I mean, not to get so tactical, but you know, safes versus convertible notes, what qualifies milestones for pre-seed versus seed. It's like creating more of a shared network, and then also shared expectations and vocabulary for investors within the state and out of the state, I think will help Maine founding companies so much when our investors in the state like keep driving forward and being ambassadors for the state of Maine too, because you know, founders can't do it alone. We need the help.
Absolutely, yes. We did have a few other questions come in, but I think if it's okay with you, if someone we wanted to get in touch with you, how could they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. And send me a note after this and let me know that you were on a session. I usually accept connections only for people that I've met personally, but this is kind of a different year. So yeah, send me a note and I'd be really happy to connect, and then I'll give you my email address and we can keep this conversation going. Excellent.
So any final words as we send folks off on their day today?
I think just thank you. Thank you for, I know all of us are a little bit zoomed out sometimes, so thank you to everyone for coming. And Katie, thank you so much for hosting this series. I think it's so important, and I can't wait to see the future series sessions to come.
Thank you very much. And just so everyone knows, we are recording these. We will send out this recording and the last one with Nick Rimza. And then our next session is on November 24th with Christine Logan, the director of Tech Place. So thank you all for joining in this morning. And like Torey said, please reach out if you have questions. This speaker series has been getting a lot of great feedback. So if you have any suggestions on as we continue to have speakers, just please reach out and let me know. So thanks, Torey, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.